You're playing live, and you don't know the song or the key. You can figure out what notes are in the key of any song on the spot without knowing any keys or any scales or even knowing the names of any of the notes. Here's the simple trick to always play in key without knowing any of your keys. All right, so before you get the wrong idea, I actually love music theory. I don't think it's boring. I think it's super interesting because I'm a nerd. But you might not like music theory, or you might think it's boring, or maybe you just want to play, and that's okay. Don't let music theory get in the way of making music and learning to make music. Also, the trick that I'm going to show you will serve you even more once you know your theory. I use this even more after having learned all my keys and learned theory and all that. So you don't know the song, you don't know what key the song's in, and you don't even know any of your keys to even guess at what key it's in. You don't have to memorize every scale and key if you memorize the simple structure of a major scale. So what is a major scale? It's this. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. All Western music is based on that. If you memorize the simple structure of the major scale, then you can just reconstruct it whenever you need it, and you don't have to memorize all the different versions of it. So here's the structure. You move in increments as follows. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Let me do that again. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. But Billy, what is a whole step and a half step? Are you trying to sneak some theory in this? A half step is a fret. A whole step is 2 frets. That's a whole step interval because it's 2 frets. That's a half step interval because it's 1 fret. An interval is just the space between 2 notes. I'm talking about the intervals between each note that makes up the scale. It's easy to memorize this. There are several ways. The easiest is to kind of make a song about it. Just do this nerdy thing with me so that you don't have to learn a dozen keys, right? Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. If you just kind of sing that in your brain a little bit while you do it, you'll get it. And it'll stick in your brain and you'll always have it and it will always be there. You'll never forget it. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Another way to memorize it is starting at the first note. There's 2 whole steps and a half step, and then 3 whole steps and a half step. So if you can think of, I've got 2 whole steps before my half step, and then I've got another 3 whole steps before my other half step. 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, half step. I'm doing all of this on 1 string just so you can see the linear nature of these intervals, just the one note after the other. You can do it across the strings, but then you'd have to know a little more about guitar. Let's just stick with on the 1 string for now. Another way to memorize it is that it's actually the same structure twice. So it's whole step, half step, and then starting from the 5th, whole step, half step. So it's harder to see that on the guitar as it would be if I showed you on paper, but it's essentially 2 whole steps leading to a half step, and then you start on the next note, 2 whole steps leading to a half step. So start on the 1st, 2 whole steps leading to a half step. Start on the 5th, 2 whole steps leading to a half step. If you get this memorized, which is very simple, this is not much information, a phone number is more information, then you will be able to reconstruct the major scale whenever you need it, to start with a few notes and then determine what the other notes are supposed to be based on that. It will work on minors too. Minor scales will work just the same. So the only problem is that you'd have to start at a different place. It's what we call a relative minor. So on this E string, we're playing an E major chord. But if we played the relative minor, we could play the same notes, and it could just as easily be in C sharp minor. If you don't know what a C sharp is, forget about it. It doesn't matter. That's the point of the video. So using this to explore a song where we have no idea what or where we are, all you have to do is start with a few probing notes. Let me show you with a loop that I made, not knowing what key I played this loop in, how I would probe around using that structure to find what key I was in. I'll know what notes are in it on the fretboard without even having to know what the names of the notes are or what the key actually is. The first note is just a leap of faith. It's going to be good or it's not. All right. It's not in the chord. I can hear it. It's not in the chord. Okay. That one was in the chord. Okay. So I kind of got lucky. I landed on some notes. Yeah, see, that's not in the chord, but it works as a part. But what did I find? I found three whole steps. These three notes are in the key. They're two whole steps. So I already found three notes, which means I have two of my intervals. So it's this note, and this note are in there. They're harmonic tones somehow. So that means I have two whole steps. Ready? Whole step, whole step. So now, if you've ever played video games where you have a little guy who you control and he goes across the virtual map, and as you explore, the map reveals. It's dark until your little guy goes there, and then more of the map is revealed. I have three notes of the board revealed, and now I can just explore the edges. I can go below this note or above this note to find out what's in the rest of the map. So let's try that. Okay, so the half step worked. So now I have a half step, a whole step. So coming above the now four notes that I've found on my map, the next note is either going to be a half step or a whole step. And that's going to show me some things. It's going to really show me the rest of this. No, that wasn't right. That's right. We tried the whole step, and we could tell right away that wasn't a good one. That was a sour note. That note's not supposed to be on the map. So then we tried the other one, which is the half step. And what we learned is that it is on the map. It sounded right. We've gone over using this when you know nothing to probe and explore, just memorizing this very simple structure so that you can find your way and find out where the notes are that you can play. Now, let's take it a little further. What if we did know a little more? There's a half step here, and there's a half step here. We know the whole scale. We know the whole scale up and down the fretboard because there's a half step here. So that means that this note is either the first note or the fourth note. And we know it's the first because this is the fourth. If this was the fourth, that would be one of our notes. But because that note was sour, it's not on the map. This note is on the map. We know that that's the fourth. Here's our scale. whole step, half step, whole step, half step. We don't even have to know what any of those notes are. It doesn't matter. So if you know where both of those half step intervals are, then you know where the 1 is, and you know where the 4th is. If you know where the 1 is, then you know where the 7th is, and you know where the 2nd is. If you know where the 4th is, then you know where the 3rd is, and you know where the 5th is. Now you know where the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th are. There's your major chord, or arpeggio, since we didn't play them at the same time. And if you know where the 5th is, then you know where the 6th is, which means you could start there and play your relative minor if you wanted to. Then you know every note in the key, just by memorizing whole step, half step, whole step, half step, and probing to get a few of the notes revealed. Also, if you know the 1, and if you happen to know what note that is, it's an F sharp, well, now we know we're in the key of F sharp. And that may or may not help you depending on if you know any F sharp scales. So that would tell me since I memorized that scale, now that I know I'm in F sharp, I know I can play there. I can play it up here too. It's extremely helpful to know your keys. It's extremely helpful to know your theory in general, but at the end of the day, it's not necessary. It's just the fast track. It's just a shortcut. You can be a competent musician without music theory, so don't let that get in the way if you hate it, or if you just don't want to do that right now. You should learn your scales so that you know your keys. But in the meantime, this trick will help you get the music done, make people happy, and once you learn your theory, it's only going to help you even more. So please comment below if any of what I said wasn't clear, or if you'd like me to talk more about any of it. And if you liked it or you think you're going to use it, let YouTube know by clicking the like button. Maybe somebody else will see it and it'll help them. Hey, thanks for hanging with me till the end of the video. I really appreciate it.